Commissioner Wolf.
Here.
And Commissioner Parker is not here yet.
And we'll need a motion to approve the agenda for tonight.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And now we'll open up to first public comment. Don't have any public comment this evening. Next we will approve the minutes from March's meeting? April meeting.
Yes.
Any comments?
I make motion to approve.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And now we have a presentation.
Oh, actually,
Oops.
no presentation today. Sorry. Normally, if we have one, that's where it would be. But
So on to regular business.
all right. So today I wanted to talk about, since one of the purposes of this commission is to talk about product mix and what we have at market, our producer-only definitions and requirements, which are great, are sometimes difficult to figure out exactly what qualifies as producer-only and how much in-depth we want to ask the vendors to get into making or growing their products. And so I have three kind of common asks that vendors want to bring to market, and I just wanted to get a little further guidance on how we want to, when we want those at market and what we want to require them to do to the products. And then if there is, another one that I haven't, a product I haven't mentioned, we can also talk about that. But I guess I'd like to start with t-shirts and clothing. The other thing I should mention is there are vendors that already bring these items. I'm looking really for guidance moving forward. So when I'm assessing new applications, how I can guide vendors. So with t-shirts and clothing, my questions are, I'd like to discuss to what level a vendor should make the item. Is designing them and then sending them to a printmaker okay? Or do we want to have them silk screen it themselves? Or if they are designing it and sending it to a printmaker, should there be a certain level of design, or is just wording okay? Yeah, so that's kind of where I'd like to start. Any thoughts?
I've been thinking about it. First of all, I think we probably have enough t-shirts already there. I don't see them as being a big selling item, and we don't want to be looking like a flea market. Secondly, I think that because how are you going to determine to what level is the artwork or whatever they're designing, I really think they should be doing the whole thing themselves. We used to have a lady who, and I think she's ill now, she made beautiful clothing, jackets and so on, and she made that whole thing. And, if they're gonna sell t-shirts, then the least they can do is silk screen them. And that's fine if it makes it difficult, because I don't think we need a lot of it anyway. That's my opinion.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other thoughts?
I guess I agree with Carlene. I mean, and it's hard because how do you define the origination of an image or an idea or an item? It's hard for me to wrap my brain around t-shirts, but so here's another item that might raise questions is so if a farmer raises sheep and wants to sell the wool or pelt, I don't know what you call it, which, that's a really authentic product, but they do send it to another individual for the processing and the finished product part of it. I mean, I think that's a really great product to sell at market, but is that producer only? Because they're not producing the skin, you know, I mean, they raise the animal, but, you know, so how do you apply a definition to that scenario? You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in just that particular case, I would feel like a lot of vendors, if we're talking about animals, raise the animals themselves and then take it to a processor to make the sausage and the meat. And so that, in my mind, that's kind of similar.
Yeah, it's true.
But, hey.
I guess for me, it's more, for this case in particular, it seems more from a consumer viewpoint. And I come to the farmer's market primarily for food. And so there are lots of venues for T-shirts, other things like that. But it seems like if that were to take up space from other food options, I would be kind of sad, because that's one of the things that I seek. No matter if it was made fully handmade and whatever, I'm really actually still mostly looking for food, and so that's my priority that I have from coming from just a consumer viewpoint.
Yeah.
So.
A lot of times it will be, those in addition to their product to kind of add to their branding and that kind of thing. I don't think we would usually assign a stall just for T-shirts and nothing else, but this is, commonly requested to add. Okay, that's helpful. Hey, Holly.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for your patience.
No problem. To catch you up, we're just talking about the producer-only definitions and where we wanna draw lines or ask for more. Okay, so that is helpful on the T-shirts. The next one I wanted to look at is meat. And particularly, it's common practice to buy feeder animals and raise them yourself and then sell the meat. And so I think my question was, how long should you have an animal on your property and be raising it yourself before you consider it yours? As opposed to the feeder farmer that bred the animal. I was able to find the state of Michigan's definition from a Michigan livestock dealer, and MDARD says that you are exempt from getting a livestock dealer license if they say that part of the business of a farmer which consists of buying or receiving animals for feeding, grazing, and feeding purposes in the sale or disposal of such animals after feeding or grazing of not less than 21 days. So 3 weeks is
That's
basically
really short.
how I take that as, if you've had it longer than 3 weeks, you can consider it your own and you don't need the livestock dealer's license to be able to sell that animal. I think that, each animal has, of course, different amounts of time you raise it. But I feel personally like we should think of a different qualification than 3 weeks for everything. So, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, I don't know much about livestock, but, chickens are the shortest. I mean, they should be day old when you get, I don't know, or.
You're going to sell the meat.
Right, yeah, because I think it just creates this fine line between reselling, because 3 weeks is so short. I mean, you're basically reselling someone else's animal.
Yeah.
So, maybe we come up with definitions for the different livestock. How old do you buy a feeder pig?
40 pounds.
Yeah, at 40 pounds, so that.
But, and feeder pigs, you can get them as small as 25 or 30, and they don't really sell feeder pigs bigger than 50 or 60.
Right, yeah. So I think maybe it would help to look at the 4 most common things, meat, like chicken, beef, pork, and lamb. And maybe talk through a little bit of
poultry.
each one.
Yeah, I was going to say probably all poultry.
Poultry, right, sorry, yeah.
Well, for one thing on poultry, generally I think you get it as a just hatched bird, unless you're going to use it for eggs.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But I guess there's the case of someone who doesn't, or if someone just buys a whole truckload full of, I don't know, adult chickens and then just holds on to them for a few days and then,
Yeah,
and that's what we want to avoid.
right.
I think, I think for poultry, that makes sense, getting them really young as chicks. How about pork or pigs?
I mean, whatever that feeder size is, right? No more-
I would
no
think
more
so,
than
because
that.
it only takes you, what, 4 or 5 months from feeder pig to fat pig? 6 months at the most?
6 months, roughly.
So I have a question. Are we trying to define the amount of time that someone has to own something before they can sell it? Or are we trying to define the like size at which they need to be when they're sold?
I think maybe the amount of time.
Okay.
Yeah. We're talking about the oldest the animal can be when you bring it onto your farm.
Okay.
So, right.
So we're trying to basically regulate what other people do when they, like how old the animals can be when they purchase them to bring them onto their farm?
No, we're just trying to say that if they're gonna sell the meat at the farmer's market as meat that they produce, that we really want them to produce it.
Right.
I think that's what we're saying. And the thing of it is, if, for example, a beef, which is the longest, if you only have it for 3 weeks,
Yeah.
you just
It's not gonna
maintained
be-
what you got.
Yeah.
And you can't really say anything about what it was fed,
Mm-hmm.
because most of his life it was somewhere else. I mean, a beef is over a year old, maybe up to 2 years when you butcher it.
2 years, yeah,
Yeah.
usually.
And I mean, it depends on the breed, the size of it when you butcher it. So I don't know, I mean, I would think, you used to always think of when you're getting in feeder cattle, you could get them anywhere from a bottle baby up to 500-600 pounds. And if you got them bigger than that, you really weren't fattening them up or raising them. But I think it's gonna be kind of hard to define exactly what it is, and I don't think MDARD is gonna help us.
Yeah. I could see kind of with Holly's question, a difficulty might be like, we can't say when you bring the pigs into the butcher, like, what if you bring them in at 4 months and they're small and you just don't care that they're smaller, but you want to take them to market? Or, maybe it makes sense saying something where like you should have them on your farm for a certain percentage of their life.
Yeah, I think if the spirit of what we're trying to sort of enforce is that they're not, flipping animals for sale at the market, then it seems to me that sort of, what, I think, we should just say that and spell that out and say as best as we can define it, because there's always going to be a special case or something that doesn't quite fit, but I think we should define, say what we're trying to accomplish here in terms of like sort of the goal or the spirit of it. And then as best we can, we define that as, and maybe and I think that maybe percentage of their lifespan thus far has been, X% has been on your farm. It seems a smart way to get to that spirit. I don't know if there might be a better way.
Maybe something like 50%.
Yeah, maybe it's
For a
over
chicken,
50%.
it should be
like,
more.
yeah, I would say like 50% or more. Like that's a pretty easy way to sort of try to capture that.
I mean, I think whatever we choose to do, it'll have to be enforceable in the inspection process, right? So what's going to be, you know what I mean? Like, what does that end look like? Like the actual monitoring and enforcement of that?
That's a good question.
Is it self-reported on our system? Like, are they going to have to keep track
Documentation.
of the dates that they brought in animals and where they sourced them? I also wonder if it'd be worthwhile looking at the National Organic Program guidelines for organic livestock. Not that we're imposing organic guidelines, but they do have definitions about when you can bring in live animals the latest you can bring them in for them to be certified organic meat. And that's all based on, you know, the turnover in the animal's body. So like any, you know, like medicines or conventional feed that they received up to a certain age is like been processed through their meat, and then, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're defining the organic integrity of the meat. And so, you know, there's probably some research there, and, you know, maybe they have ages for the different animals. I don't know, I haven't looked.
That
Really
Might
good
be
idea.
helpful.
Yeah, that would be interesting to look at. I could look into that and let you know. But yeah, I think all those are good points, like knowing, so what I'm hearing is a percentage of the lifespan of the animal and how long it's been on your farm, maybe 50% or more. How do we enforce that, and how does that fit into our inspection process? I have to think about it. I'm not sure.
Well, if you're purchasing animals, you should have receipts
Yeah,
to
I would
show
think you'd
when
have
you purchased
documentation.
them. And if they don't want to tell the inspector how much they paid, they are welcome to, you know, cover that up or whatever, as long as it showed the date.
True.
Um,
The only challenge I can see with that is in terms of exploitation. If someone said like, oh yeah, I bought this, it was not on my farm, I didn't actually take possession of, but I purchased it and it's elsewhere, and then I've had it for all its life. I bought it when it was born. So that's a
Yeah.
little tricky there.
It is hard. I don't always have, I mean, sometimes, like, the animal sales are just so informal. You don't always have a receipt. It's hopefully documented somewhere, like in my notes or in a calendar or something. I guess we could say,
Well, when the inspector is inspecting animals, I mean, they've got to see some animals at your farm. So if you said, I bought it, but it's over there, well, then I guess somehow you have to convince the inspector, let's go over there and you can see it over there or something. There's always going to be somebody who's going to try to pull something, but I don't think generally that's what we have going on. And I think if you come up with some kind of a reasonable definition that has some, which I say some, you know, kind of like backbone behind it, or something that proves that yes, this is a producer market, and no, you're not going to be a dealer, just getting under the wire by having your animal for 25 days.
okay, yeah. So sort of, I mean, I think we will need to leave it a bit on a case-by-case basis, but we can ask the inspector to ask questions about this when they visit the farm. You know, ask, do you have any receipts, or do you have any animals here right now that are younger, or facilities? I mean, there are a number of ways, like you said, to kind of look at that. Okay, yeah. And oh no, it's my dad. Okay, good. Was there anything else about that? I can come back and maybe have some final wording for you next meeting. But yes. Oh.
That sounds great. And I think any benchmarks you find are, you know, examples like from the organic farming perspective, or it seems like
Yeah.
maybe there's some other national resources that might have some thoughts. So I think that'd be helpful too, just to know if we're way off base, or,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, that's a good idea.
Did you have a scenario with produce that you wanted to talk about, with like defining producer only?
Well, I think Carlene would know this better than I would. I could not find any records in my files, but I thought you had talked about like seedling, like how long you should have seedlings or seeds.
I don't think there's been any guidelines. I think it's been a question that's up for debate for a long time. And the only thing I can say is that most of the people who do bring like seedlings and plants do bring other things to market. And I know, like, the inspector has, at my place, had been coming always like in August, when there's a ton of produce, but then she never sees the other seasons of the year. So this year, I told her, when she called, or no, when I saw her, and she says, well, she had to inspect us this year, I says, well, you said you wanted to come in a different season, so maybe you should speed it up. So she came in April, I mean, and she could see lots of younger plants that weren't completely mature yet. And I think that's probably, you can't say that everything has to be grown from seed,
Right.
because not everything that gets sold is propagated from seed.
But there could be a scenario like the livestock. I mean, I don't know much about hanging baskets, but couldn't someone buy a finished hanging basket and
There's
set
such
it in
a-
their greenhouse for a week and
Yeah,
then
they
bring it?
could.
So do we need a
there's such
guideline for
thing as
that too?
pre-finished hanging baskets, which means you get them maybe 3 weeks before. That might be the 3-week deal.
Yeah.
The ones I have, we have to get them in February or so. The ones we get in March are smaller. They're still growing.
Yeah.
And do you feel like there's like an integrity issue with that? Like with the different, you know what I mean? Like is that of question? Do we need to add definition to it?
What I see happening at the market right now, I don't think you have any issues. That's just my own opinion. I haven't been to anybody's place, but everybody has kind of their own style of what they're doing. I just don't feel like you have any issues there right now. Now, maybe sometime in the future, that could become a problem, but
Yeah. Well, I agree, but I think part of the purpose, we don't really have an issue with meat right now either, but this is more, I could foresee it being an issue, and so I want to have a response and have talked about it beforehand. So I think that with plants, it makes sense to have some sort of definition of what we want. That's more than like 3 weeks in your greenhouse and then sell it.
Like maybe it's a maximum plug size that you're ordering in. Like, I don't know, you know more about this than I do, but if you said like you can't order any larger than 32, because then that means you're basically buying a finished plant, you know, if you buy things in that, you know, a pint or a gallon, right? That's a finished plant. I don't know.
yeah, it really depends on the plant a lot. I mean, like, if you're doing roses, your plant that you get is gonna be, is probably gonna be a dormant plant, then you're gonna, you know, keep it for it to leaf out. If you're doing perennials, a lot of those are bare root or something like that, and you might have them for several months. You'll get them, you'll pot them up, and then try water, control the temperature, and so on. Watch for disease, whatever. I think it could be defined, but it's going to be harder than
Harder than the meat.
yeah. And I mean, I think that we want to make sure that all the definitions are the spirit that you really are
Right.
growing this yourself. That you really aren't having somebody else do all the work and you're just getting it pre-finished, so to speak.
Well, maybe with plants and vegetables, because there are so many at market and it does vary so much. I feel like that's something I need to maybe research what other guidelines are out there and think about that more.
Well, you could even break it down to annual, perennial, and then a woody, like a rose or a shrub, and because those 3 categories pretty well define the 3 different things. So, you know, just like we do with the livestock, or you know, pork, chicken, beef, it would be like that.
Okay.
And a different way to do this too could be to kind of develop a process for kind of a committee process. And so that, and then, because rather than anticipating all future products and all future things and specifying those all in stone,
Yeah,
okay, well, now a situation actually has arisen.
that's a
And
good
then we
idea.
can discuss the specifics of that. And if we have a policy for that, then that helps us be flexible long-term.
I like that idea too. Yeah.
I wonder if it'd be useful too to just consult or even survey nursery vendors we currently have and livestock vendors we currently have. So just to ask them, you know, how would you define, you know, grown by you? you know, like what's too old of a cattle to buy in, and you know,
Mhm.
it could just be like a 3-question survey for each one.
Yeah. That would help.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that with the plants, there's quite a range of the amount of time you'll need to have that for it to finish at the right time. And some of them do grow pretty fast, but it would definitely be more than 3 or 4 weeks. But there's some things that aren't too hard to finish in 6 weeks. And then there's other ones, if you don't have it for 3, 4 months, it's gonna be kind of puny.
Right, yeah. So we have to kind of look at those
Mhm.
differently then.
Because I was just looking today, I was packing Million Bells and Verbena, and those are two of them that finish off pretty fast. And I was thinking, we didn't get those until later March. And when I'm looking at them today, I'm going, okay, come on, everybody, let's buy these, because I don't want to have to trim them and then wait for them to blossom again. So, but definitely more than 3 or 4 weeks.
Okay, well, I'm gonna do a little more research on that one. My final one I wanted to talk about was tea. Should it be as much as the vendor growing their own ingredients for the tea? Or, a lot of requests we get, they will buy different herbs and then blend them together, create the packaging, create the, put them in the bags for the tea, even though they haven't grown it themselves. And then, if they're doing that, do they have to do some sort of processing to the herbs before they put them together? Is it, I guess that's kind of where my mind is, what I'm wondering your thoughts on.
Well, if I understand right, like when you have bakery or baker applicants, right? Isn't there like sort of an unspoken preference for bakers that are using Michigan-grown ingredients, right? So
Yeah.
Over someone who's just buying in flour and butter and sugar and making cookies, say.
Yeah.
So couldn't we have a similar sort of preference applied to tea? Well, or even a definition, more formal than a preference, that 50% of the tea ingredients should be Michigan. I guess this isn't related to whether it's produced or not, and sort of off tangent, but.
We had one person who was bringing tea last summer. I don't know if they're going to continue to come. Can you tell us more about them?
Sure. For that particular one, they don't grow their ingredients. They order Michigan products, a lot of organic products, and they blend the teas. And so we said we don't sell any teas that you're not blending. So it needs to be some sort of combination of the things. You need to do some sort of work to make sure the flavor, you've created that flavor yourself. And then they also put a lot of work into their packaging and stuff as well.
I guess from my perspective, it seems like from, again, consumer viewpoint, that it seems like it's nice to have some choices and diversity. And so I'd welcome having some different things. And I'm not sure how to work that in a way that if there are certain classes of things that are more gray, almost like working in, it's like a separate tier or something like that. It's like a bumpable tier that it's like, if there's capacity, then I as someone wandering through there would really welcome having some diversity of some other things which aren't quite as hyper-local, that are a little bit more assembled in that way, but just to have the diversity. But if someone else comes in who has something more that fits the mix, then they're off. Then the other one's off the list. And so somehow dynamically doing that would be great. My dream would be the market was like always full all the time, and so there'd always be something. And it sometimes would be a little lean on some things, but okay, we kind of shift to something else. But on the times when there's tons of August, when it's totally packed with tomatoes and melons, I want it to be totally packed with tomatoes and melons. So.
Yeah, and I think one challenge with that though too is, once you're a vendor, you're always a vendor. So if we get another applicant who is, who kind of fits more into what we are kind of wanting to bring, then I have to still consider the product mix and too much on the market of that item. Um,
Well, we have coffee.
Yeah, I
and
was
coffee
just
doesn't grow here. But I mean, I think they are doing significant work. They're roasting and
They
they're
roast it.
blending. And it's a popular booth at the market.
Yeah.
At least a sustainable booth, because they've been coming now for a few years. So I guess, I mean, understand that tea can be made out of tons of different stuff.
Yeah.
And not all of that grows here either.
Right.
So for them maybe to be viable, you wouldn't possibly be able to ask them to grow everything.
Right.
But how to make a definition, that's a little harder.
Yeah. I mean, I like the idea that, they should be having some sort of custom blend or like I mean, that's the producing part, right?
Yeah.
So even if they're buying in the ingredients, it's
Right.
their personalized blend, because otherwise they would just be repackaging
Yeah.
something with a different name.
Yeah, I agree. The most I can think of is sort of that process of blending and creating your own flavor. Might be kind of how we say, okay, you've produced enough, and that counts. Okay.
Well, and you do have the right to accept applicants or deny them, so, I mean, we're not gonna load the market up with people who are blending tea.
No.
We might try one and see if if it's enough business for them, and
Yeah.
if it seems to be, then maybe we would have for 2, but I can't see us having 10.
No, no, we wouldn't do that.
But how are food trucks, where do they categorize in this? I don't remember how they, as a separate thing, because they're kind of more in that sense of they do produce, but they don't, sometimes they have local ingredients, sometimes kind of not.
Yeah, so we don't require they have local ingredients, although it's a preference. They do have to, they can't, I guess, have any frozen ingredients and simply reheat it and serve it. So if they have fries, they have to cut the potatoes. If they have meat, they can't buy frozen pre-made patties and just put them on the grill. They have to, make the patties themselves. And stuff. So, we kind of look at each individually, but sort of along those lines.
But in terms of something for, and kind of as I was thinking about this other kind of group of more kind of pop in, pop out kind of group, it seems like the food trucks seem to kind of fall into that category, and at least I see a lot of turnover in the food truck folks, or at least from my perspective. And so, in some ways, is there a way to kind of lump some of these, like the tea folks, into that where you get more kind of churn in that, but that might be a way to kind of include it without having someone once a vendor, always a vendor. That food trucks don't seem quite in the vendor, they're in a different box.
That's true. We schedule them differently. They're not daytime vendors.
Yeah.
They are, the mobile food vendors, we schedule them just on our own schedule. They can't just come whenever they want.
Yep.
And then they have to reapply each year, and it's not guaranteed they'll be back.
And again, that seems to fit more with, again, what I would like, in terms of it seems like if there were people who are annual vendors who are really full-on producers, that's who I want most. But if there are other folks in there, I'd like it. I'd like the infill too, would be handy too. And so that would be a way to kind of use an existing structure to incorporate those folks too.
Like primary producers, secondary producers or
Yep.
something.
Yep.
I think the other thing I just want to note too is you may not be the I guess the only profile of customer, right, who comes through the market. And so I do wonder a little bit if by promoting some diversity of products, if it's tea or T-shirts isn't a great example, but I do think it probably brings in people who might not come otherwise if they think it's only going to be fruits and vegetables. I mean, I think there's probably, I know that I really believe and have heard anecdotally and experienced that there's an attraction from the food trucks. And I think bringing in families and that kind of thing. And so I think, we should also try to maintain some balance in considering what can draw new people in and even tourists. And, I don't know that tourists are likely to come to buy their melons and their tomatoes, right?
Absolutely.
But they are likely to come for coffee and, a muffin and a T-shirt or tea or whatever. And so I think we just should be careful about finding a way to incorporate some of this diversity of product line into the market.
Yeah, good. All right, thank you. So yeah, I'll try to bring next meeting some more thought out response to our conversation today and see what you all think. Ugh, he is. Okay.
Okay, and now we will move on to non-agenda items. We don't have any, is that right? New business?
Let's see, new business, yes, that's right. No.
Any new business? No? And our market manager report is next.
Okay. So, updates. The parking lot has been resurfaced. Yay.
Yes, beautiful.
We're currently installing new lights. They were old plastic lights and were falling down, and we're also replacing them with LEDs, so they're more energy efficient. We're looking at quotes to repair and to replace the gutters, so we're trying to get quotes for both. And then I'm getting a final quote for lighting the parking lot better. So they did remove that street lamp. So it's, the concern of the vendors, especially I think last year who were in the sand lot, it was difficult to see and not well lit in the mornings when we were setting up. So trying to get that lit better. Yeah, Commission PMAC. Thanks to Alex for renewing her term, so she'll be back. And sadly, we're saying goodbye to Carlene. This is your last meeting. And we are going to be welcoming Commissioners Jeff Nemeth to replace Carlene and Lisa Young next month to replace Joel. So Lisa, do you want to stand up and say hi and just give a quick intro?
I have to go to a mic or?
No.
So hi, I'm Lisa Young. I've been going to the market since I was not a grad here, and I won't tell you how long it was. And recently I started teaching some classes at the University of Michigan on local food production, and then on the history of food at the University of Michigan to help students learn about the food system that feeds them. And my students in the local food producers class interviewed Sealy Farm and the Getz Farm, and I have seen how much they learned by coming to the farmers market, because many have never done that, and by being able to actually talk to food producers. So one of the reasons I was interested in being part of the commission is just for me to learn what happens behind the scenes at the farmers market. And also, since the farmers market's about to be 100 years old, I, by training, am an archaeologist, so I always am thinking about history and taking an anthropological perspective on things. So that was my interest.
Great.
Well, welcome. We're excited to have you. The yearly stall fee notices and food assistant packets are being sent out this month, and the stall fees are due June 30th, and also that 15 minimum attendance is June 30th, so those are that's a deadline coming up. Events, the Made Food Truck Rally was really well attended. We had 16 trucks, so those are the first Wednesdays, so that was more trucks than last year, and but it was really, we had enough customers to really make it worthwhile for all the trucks. I think
wonderful.
It was nice. Huh? Yeah, and nice
That's
weather.
great, yeah.
Yeah. We had our first guest chef cooking demo on Wednesday. Chef Ji-hye from Miss Kim came and did a fresh kimchi. So that will be the third Wednesday of every month through October. And Flower Day is coming up. That's May 27th on a Sunday. Getting ready, trying to get the word out about that. And finally, the Ann Arbor Symphony Orchestra will be running an instrument petting zoo for kids in August, we hope. hopefully in August. They're definitely going to do it. We're just getting a final date. Okay. He really wants
He really does.
All right.
Okay. Now we'll open it up to our second public comment period. No public comments. And we are ready to adjourn, and it's 6:14.
Woohoo. Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
I know.
We're gonna
We'll
miss
miss
you.
you.
Carlene.
I know, we need to.